Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new week out there. To kickstart your week, unfortunately, we are dealing with a pretty significant severe weather risk across areas of the country. So, of course, most of our focus is going to go in on that right at the beginning of this video. But as always, we will cover the rest of the lower 48 too, because there's other areas that run a risk of severe weather too, like the northern plains, areas of the interior northeast region, and then we'll talk about everywhere else too. We'll talk a little bit about the pattern to come at the very end of the video. We really dove deep into that in yesterday morning's video, and we'll probably do it again in tomorrow morning's video. But won't do it again in this morning's video just because we're going to spend a lot of time on the severe weather event that's going to unfold later on this afternoon that could be quite significant for some people. This could be one of our bigger severe weather threats that we've seen in several weeks. So it's been, I would say, more quiet compared to last summer, as last summer we just had weekly enhanced risk. I mean, we had some very weird, abnormal, severe weather threats pretty far south in the middle of summer, even late summer, from what I remember. So this one's kind of like what we saw last summer, definitely a higher end event. So an enhanced risk right now, level 3 out of 5. We're not talking about a moderate or a high risk. It could upgrade though, so we got to watch for this. So we'll break it all down. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. I do want to briefly mention, if you are interested in checking out me and Gerald's podcast from last night, type in GM Weather. His name's Gerald. He runs that YouTube channel. All those videos are going to be posted on there. Me and him chit chat for over an hour just about weather, stories, life, all those good things. We have a little fun on there. We're going to do that during the slower times throughout really any given time of the year. It's not ever really going to be a set time or anything like that. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. But definitely check that out. The link was in my community tab from yesterday. So if you're wondering where a link of it is, it's there. I might post it in the comments below this video. But, you know, it's something that you can just kind of turn on the audio and listen. Nothing to really watch. We're not showing you anything except our faces. So. But anyways, if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. I am very behind on comments. This is the first week in a while. I wasn't able to stop and answer the comments yesterday. I just was kind of lazy this weekend, just kind of taking a break, enjoying the downtime. So I'll get caught up with everything later this afternoon, whether it's Facebook or YouTube comments. So let's get rocking and rolling. A lot to talk about. You can see there's a million tabs pulled up. So we got energy flying on the upper portion of this ridge. We already have ongoing severe thunderstorm warnings in Minnesota. We got moisture in South Dakota you're waking up to. A little spin ongoing in lower Michigan. You're waking up to some unsettled weather in most of lower Michigan. Got some rain moving into the Detroit region. Rain is heading out of the Indianapolis area. And we do have spotty downpours across the northeast. The southern tier of the country is pretty quiet. Some on and off downpours down here. There's a lot of people begging for the rain, and we done got into another streak of no rain here in my neck of the woods. We done went about a week, which isn't that long. But when you're in the dead of summer, when it's in the 90s to low 100s, I mean, just going 5 days without rain really makes the grass and everything unhappy, that's for sure. So thankfully, there is good news for folks down here in the southern tier of the country, the deep south, the southeast. We do have a rainy pattern that's going to settle in and have some longevity to it by the middle to ending portion of this week that we're in now. But we got moisture kind of rounding around this ridge in the western U.S. also. So this is what's going on right now. We do need to watch these features and what they mean downstream later on to this afternoon, to this evening's severe weather setup. You know, the H-triple-R model got a couple things right yesterday, but it got a few things wrong. Same thing with the NAM. You know, the H-triple-R model totally whiffed on that line of storms that was destructive across areas of Indiana. The NAM sort of showed it. So I just want to, this full disclaimer, these models are not going to nail this setup today, but we'll talk about that more when we break down the weather for you guys up here in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. But one of the big stories today also is heat, but, you know, I would argue it's not even much of a story anymore. It's just the kind of usual thing I mentioned yesterday on social media. It seems like hitting 100 degrees is just a fart in the wind these days. You know, it's just a normal thing here in Columbia. It seems like this summer we hit, I know my weather station said 103. It was probably a little bit higher than what it really was. We probably hit about 100, 101 here. I know it hit at least 100 degrees at the airport here in Columbia. But we went a few summers there where, we didn't hit 100 throughout the entire summer. We've hit it quite a few times this year. It's been a very hot summer over the last several summers across the middle of the country. This summer is no different. The orange heat advisories, the purple colors, excessive heat warnings, excessive heat watches, and the burgundy colors. So very hot in some of these higher populated regions of like the DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia area. Very hot, excessive heat warning criteria hot across the eastern sections of North Carolina. So if you're vacationing along the coastal sections of the Carolinas, up to Virginia, all the way up into the southern New England region, I mean, it's just going to be awfully hot. Heat advisories and the southern tip of Florida also. The western U.S., you're getting a little bit of a break. You're not littered with all these heat alerts and things like that, but the heat will return, unfortunately. But the excessive rainfall outlook, the one area we will watch for is in the yellow. Has at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in any given location. So there is a little bit more of a higher end flooding risk in this yellow area today. This does include Chicago and then areas of Iowa, northern Illinois. Storm Prediction Center outlook. We're going to zoom into this area right into here, the Midwest, and kind of really just talk in detail, mention some towns and cities. But I do want to mention what's kind of new is we do have a slight risk in western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, sections of Kansas and Wyoming. Level 2 out of 5 here. We do have a level 1 out of 5 risk once again in southern sections of Arizona, marginal risk. And we do have a slight risk, level 2 out of 5, for areas of New York State and then Pennsylvania. So, Buffalo, Rochester, Watertown, Syracuse, Scranton, Binghamton, you guys got that level 2 out of 5 risk. But the big risk today that everybody has their eyes on is right here in the Midwest. Chicago included in this, into areas of Iowa, Peoria, Rockford, not quite up to Milwaukee, even though you guys will have a risk of severe weather. The highest end threat as of now, and this could expand, guys. This could even upgrade a category if models can kind of congeal together. But this is where we have the highest risk. Enhanced threat to level 3 out of 5. And I do want to mention, only because I want to show these other two areas that are on either side of this higher risk area, but there's a 5% risk of a tornado here. And I know I'm going through this quick, but for my friends here in the Iowa, Illinois, surrounding states, I'm going to zoom into this here in a second, so just bear with me. But we do have that 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in this yellow area and this yellow area. All right. And then the hail threat. There's not much of a hail threat today. I've never seen an enhanced risk where you have this lower end of a hail threat. That's not that high end today, for sure. But you definitely can't rule it out. So let's zoom into the area of most concern. And I know it kind of leaves out Iowa as far as showing the towns and cities. I'm actually going to show Iowa. So enhanced risk in the orange, level 3 out of 5. Rockford, Chicago, Peoria, over to Lafayette, Indiana, not quite down to Indianapolis, but the slight risk, level 2 out of 5. Milwaukee, Madison, Janesville, La Crosse. Getting into like the Grand Rapids area, Indianapolis, Springfield, Quincy, and then you look over to Iowa. This does include the enhanced risk Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Burlington, Des Moines included in the slight risk, Fort Dodge, Ames, Mason City, Waterloo. Dubuque is in the enhanced risk. So we jump back to this. What is this driven? Well, what's driving this? Well, the brown area, that's a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. So it's not a super serious tornado threat, but I mean, it is a 5% risk. If you live in the green, that's a 2% risk of a tornado. Lafayette, Indianapolis, including this, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, Janesville. And we switch it back to Iowa. And just to kind of help you guys out, get a little bit more of a vantage point here. Same thing, Dubuque, Davenport, Iowa City, Waterloo. 5% risk of a tornado, Des Moines, Ames, Fort Dodge, Atlantic, Mason City. 2% risk of a tornado. Back it up to this, and you look at the wind threat. And guys, I'm not even going to show the hail threat. I mean, it's not very high at all. But the wind risk, this is what's driving the enhanced risk today. This is why they bumped it up to an enhanced risk, I should say. The red area, that is a 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in any given location. The yellow area, a 15% risk. So yellow, 15, red, 30%, and then in the black outline region, we call that a hatch risk. That is a 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. We consider that the significant criteria when it comes to winds. So, guys, some of these storms could produce hurricane-force winds. Take this serious. Chicago's included in this. Peoria, Rockford, Aurora, even Champaign has that chance of significant winds. And, of course, we go back and look at our friends here in Iowa, and there's a closer look at that. Des Moines, 15% risk of that 55 to 60 mile per hour winds, and then you also got the 10% risk of significant winds, 75 miles per hour or higher. And you do have the higher risk just altogether in eastern to southeastern Iowa. And I know I am leaving portions of Missouri hanging here a little bit. And I know I haven't mentioned Wisconsin much, but yeah, I mean, there is a risk of damaging winds into extreme northern sections of Missouri too. So certainly a higher end risk day for mid-July standards, that's for sure. So let's go on and break down Iowa first, and I'm going to have a separate for Wisconsin, and then I'm going to pretty much show everybody else. We have a great graphic vantage point for that. So let's look at the HRRR model first. We're going to try to work our way through this pretty quick, but at the same time in a way where y'all obviously understand what I'm saying. So we'll start this off around lunchtime. I know this says 1 p.m. right here, but this is in Central Time. Back it up 1 hour, that would make it around lunchtime, 12 p.m. So not a whole lot going on, right? We keep this going. We take it to about 3 p.m. Storms could very well be firing up already. But there is a mode right at the beginning of this, 4 p.m.-ish, where these storms could be discrete. Des Moines down here, Ames up here, these storms right here in sort of the entire northeast quadrant of Iowa. Could be a mode where they are discrete, kind of alone, taking advantage of all the ingredients in the atmosphere. But I think they will quickly kind of congeal together, and then this will be also a tornado risk, but it will be mainly a damaging wind risk. But these storms will kind of start to cluster together, and they will start to move fast. Dubuque, for example, around 6 p.m. getting blasted by a very intense line of storms. A lot of people are mentioning the D word, derecho, today, which if you're not familiar with that, look it up on YouTube. There's some very intense video, and of course you guys have, in Iowa, definitely do not want to think about that because of what one did, I think, back in 2020. But let's hope it does not evolve that way. This has some of the same ingredients setting up for that, but at the same time, I don't see that happening, but let's not completely roll it off the table, right? But these storms rolling through eastern Iowa are going to be very intense. And remember, I showed you this, right? Let's go back to Iowa. And sure enough, those storms are right in that red area. It's going to be a serious risk of severe winds, embedded tornadoes into this too. But it'll kind of form. It could drape a little bit further south. It could extend a little bit further west. And for example, with this, it doesn't show a drop of rain into Missouri. I mean, eventually it does as we're getting to like 4 o'clock in the morning. But we flip this and then we look at the NAM model. Back this up a little bit. Same thing, start off around the same time around lunchtime today. Looks like the same kind of stuff is unfolding, but we have some storms forming a good bit further west on the NAM. And we have a line of storms forming just in central Iowa. We got storms still ongoing in northeast Iowa, but the NAM, and I think it's important to show the NAM and the HRRR model here because I know I'm always all over the HRRR model, the HRRR model, but the NAM model needs to be, showed also because this is such a very difficult system to model with the models, if that makes sense. So, the NAM shows pretty much a line of storms sweeping across from central Iowa and then the rest of Iowa after that eastward. And these could produce damaging winds, very, very strong winds. They could produce embedded tornadoes and a very small risk of hail. But by the time you get into around midnight tonight, for the most part, it looks about done. So we start to look at like the updraft Felicity swap, indicating rotation with some of these storms. It's probably going to go crazy. Yep, and it does. And here it is. As soon as those storms form right here in this region, sort of in, central to east central Iowa, they're going to have an opportunity right off the dot to spin. I think if you're a storm chaser, or if you're in an area where you're worried about the highest risk of tornadoes, I certainly think you would post up or be concerned the most if you live in or located in eastern Iowa. I think there's going to be a mode right at the beginning of this where these storms are going to try to have an opportunity to be discreet. And I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in eastern Iowa. So, indicated by these more vibrant colors, this is where this particular model is saying, hey, this is where I like the idea of more rotating updrafts, therefore an opportunity for a higher risk of tornadoes. Now, we'll back this up, and I want to look at the winds. We're doing this all on the fly. I've been doing a lot of this on the fly lately just to avoid pulling up an excessive amount of tabs. So, I know we can't just jump the one tab to another, and that makes it a little bit more, the flow nicer, but I think that just to avoid putting a million tabs up, this works better. But the winds, look how it goes. I mean, this is like 4 p.m., right? This is 5 p.m. Look how all of a sudden you have this area popping up on your screen. 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 11 p.m. Okay, you notice the Storm Prediction Center is the HRRR model, her models totally agreeing with the Storm Prediction Center. This is where your best chance for destructive winds could be. You see these areas in white. I mean, this is 80, 85, 90 mile per hour winds, guys. I mean, we could get some higher wind gusts with this too. So that's why I think some people are kind of throwing around the D word, derecho. They're concerned about a more, just a higher end scenario with this. And that's why I am not going to be surprised they throw out a moderate risk that's wind-driven. I wouldn't be surprised one bit sometime in the updates to come later this morning. But these winds look absolutely nasty in eastern Iowa. I mean, I really think that we could get some 60, 70, 80, 90 mile per hour wind gusts with this. And I know you're thinking, what's up with these weird little gaps? This is in 1 hour intervals. Remember that. So this goes 1 hour to 1 hour here to 1 hour here. That don't mean that if you live in this area between both of these highly colored areas showing higher winds that you get jumped. It just only goes 1 hour to 1 hour. So that's a breakdown of Iowa. Now we'll kind of talk a little bit about Wisconsin too. The energy that's in Minnesota should weaken. You could deal with some rain around La Crosse and Eau Claire, you guys, but eventually that'll fizzle out. Then how much does the atmosphere recover? Well, I think it says it's going to recover pretty well. I will say, there could be some showers and storms up here, pretty much anywhere in northern Wisconsin. Could get a little bit up in the UP of Michigan too. I think some drier air will be moving in, sort of limiting the thermodynamic factor up here, but we'll see. It does show some storms up here, so don't completely ignore that. I just think it's for your friends down here in southern Wisconsin that has the biggest risk. And sure enough, we make our way into this afternoon. This is around 6 p.m. Here's these storms moving out of areas of Iowa. And I want to tell you, these storms could extend a little bit further north. Janesville's right in here, Milwaukee into here, Rockford here. Let's just focus more so on Wisconsin because we'll talk about Illinois more here in a second. But look how these storms are only really blasting the extreme southern counties of Wisconsin. These are the counties I'm worried about the most. And I'm telling you, these it could be as early as 4 or 5 p.m. and maybe as late as midnight. They will move through these southern counties and they will pack a punch, potentially for destructive like winds. I mean, just like Iowa. So Janesville, Milwaukee, just specifically talking about Wisconsin, please take this serious. And then it kind of swoops in, swoops out, and it's done. Could be embedded tornadoes with this too. Now, we kind of jump and look at the NAM because I want to compare the NAM down here too. What does the NAM show with this? Well, same thing, has the energy out of Minnesota fizzling out. Kind of shows the same similar setup in northern Wisconsin with some of those storms up there. And already it looks completely different. It's around 7 p.m. 7 p.m. on the HRRR model shows some pretty nasty storms already in the southern counties of Wisconsin. But the NAM shows some storms kind of originating up here in central sections of Wisconsin, drifting southward, and then a little bit later turning into a nasty line of storms capable of producing destructive winds, significant winds, pretty much going through central Wisconsin all the way through everybody in southern Wisconsin. And this is like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. That is a potent line of storms moving through Milwaukee right here around 11 p.m. So both models show a pretty nasty scenario for southern Wisconsin. In fact, they might bump up the severe weather chances and threats into southern Wisconsin. They might increase the wind threat into southern Wisconsin. I wouldn't be surprised one bit. We just have to watch. So same thing, you look at the updraft Felicity swath indicating at the tornado threat with this, and you cannot rule out a tornado embedded in these lines of storms. I think the highest tornado threat will be a little bit further south, but if the further south you live in Wisconsin, the higher the risk. The more you ooze southward, the higher the risk of damaging winds and tornadoes. And then you look at the damaging wind risk with this. Same deal. Back it up a little bit. And let's look at the latest longer range HRRR model. And here comes the winds right there. But I'm telling you, this is just the HRRR model. Let's actually look at the latest one, see what it shows. Yeah, so it's a little bit further north. But look at this line moving through in the southern counties of Wisconsin. But remember the NAM model. NAM model has it much further north, sweeping across all the southern counties of Wisconsin. 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts embedded in these lines of storms. So please be aware of that. Now we can show a little bit more states here, because Illinois is obviously a big area today. Indiana is a big area today. So same thing we've done with Iowa and Wisconsin. Let's compare both model guys. The HRRR model, what does it show? Well, quiet through about midday. All right, still quiet. We very well could get some thunderstorms developing in Ohio, maybe even Indiana. And then here comes the big show right here. And guys, please know, 6 p.m. at this point, Central Time, there could already be storms ongoing in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. So just note, okay? 7 p.m. Look at these storms going through northern Illinois. I mean, they're heading right towards Rockford. If you live in the northern counties of Illinois, please be aware of destructive winds later on this afternoon to this evening. This has that bowing structure to it, which normally indicates a higher wind threat. But these are moving through all the northern counties of Illinois. This could very well be extending down to Peoria. It really could, all the way down to Springfield. But this heads right towards Chicago. We already mentioned Milwaukee, Rockford. This is around 9 p.m. This cruises across the southern areas of Lake Michigan, gets into northwestern Indiana. There's still ongoing nasty weather, heavy rain into northern sections of Illinois. Look at these storms getting all the way into the Grand Rapids area. If you live in southwest Michigan later tonight, please be aware of these. And they are cruising across the southern half of lower Michigan. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning. But look at this line of storms sort of draping across north central Illinois. Same thing with Indiana. These will kind of turn into slow movers, could start to produce some flash flooding, and then eventually they will kind of just ooze southward, kind of round the eastern side of this ridge. And by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, could be waking up to some unsettled weather in southern sections of Illinois and Indiana. So that's the latest HRRR model, right? That's the timing. So let's go back over this. This is 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And I don't want to ignore my friends in Ohio. Some storms could move into your area really later tonight, later this evening. So let's back this all up again, and let's look at the NAM. Remember, these were a lot different for yesterday's event for this area. Let's back it up. So this morning, we'll get any leftover energy on out the way. Same thing midday, not a whole lot going on. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's around 3 p.m. We already got some storms ongoing down here in southern Indiana, Ohio. So, if you're in Evansville, down here, just really anywhere in Indiana, Ohio, You know, don't believe one model or the other when it comes to this afternoon. It's really what we're watching for later this evening. Same thing. Here comes all that energy coming out from the northwest, right? Moving out of Wisconsin. This is slamming Milwaukee. We've already talked about that. The NAM model says, hey, this weekend's somewhat into northern sections of Illinois. Still rock Chicago very hard. Bring some nasty storms around like midnight tonight into like Grand Rapids, into lower Michigan. And kind of gets these and sort of breaks them apart. But this is when the NAM gets kind of weird to me. Got a line of storms moving through northern Indiana, northwestern Ohio, moving through southeastern Michigan. We got this more organized area of storms moving south of Peoria, and more intense area storms just in general kind of surging through the southern half of Illinois. But it just gets kind of weird after that. So I know it's hard to take from what I'm saying. It really is. That's why I'm showing you, taking the time this morning to show you all model guidance, because there is differences. So I know some people are thinking, well, what's the point of even showing it if we really don't know what's going to happen? Well, I think there is a good point, just because it makes you aware of both models, and you kind of can take both of them and combine it with what the Storm Prediction Center is saying, and take from that like, hey, you know, we have a risk of severe thunderstorms today. And I think it's also good from an educational standpoint to continue to try to figure out which models handle these events more, because this is kind of like a northwest flow setup in general, even though it's driven off energy to the north. But anyways, getting off track here. The updraft helicity swath, this tornado threat. Here it comes. Right into here, into northern Illinois. I think the HRRR model, the HRRR model, is doing well with the tornado risk. It's kind of like highlighting the best risk of rotation with these storms, pretty much right where the Storm Prediction Center is thinking is going to be the best chance to see a tornado. And that is right up here in areas of Iowa and to the northern half of Illinois. But some of this, you see these colors right here kind of getting to Indiana, lower Michigan. So we're going to have some rotation with some of these storms, maybe some embedded tornadoes. And I think the tornado threat today is dangerous, because this will be sweeping lines of storms with, if we're going to get any tornadoes, it's going to be embedded in a nasty, probably squall line. So take that serious. Let's back this up. Let's look at the wind threat with the HRRR model. Here we go. Look at this, and we'll kind of go at hour by hour, right? Starting it off around 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And here comes those destructive winds right through northern sections of Illinois. So this is between now and about 10 p.m. So late this evening, the opportunity for 60, 70, 80, maybe as high end as 90 mile per hour wind gusts with these storms sweep through the northern half of Illinois. And then eventually we'll get into lower Michigan, we'll get into Indiana. And, you know, obviously this will lessen somewhat once it gets into Indiana, Ohio, lower Michigan. But guys, this could still be packing a punch once it gets to the eastern side of Lake Michigan. So this is the corridor right into here with the highest wind gusts. But especially right into here. Okay. Get this back off, and you compare that with the NAM, the latest NAM model. And it's honestly about the same in general. They pretty much agree with the wind threat. And so just, I would take that with like this, like, hey, there's a lot of confidence in this significant wind threat today. So if you're interested, I'm going to break it down anyways. But what's driving this? Well, you got just a corridor of northwest flow. You got a jet digging down. You got energy embedded in this jet. And this is enhancing the kinematic flow in the low to mid level, up basically all levels of the atmosphere. So these colors you're going to see kind of dive down your screen. This is what we call mid-level flow. And it's the highest up here, but there's drier air up here. So we keep this in motion. I guess I'm going to have to hold its hand here. Come on. We keep this in motion. And you notice a lot of this wind energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere starts to dive southeast from the northwest. So we call this the exit region of this mid-level jet. This is where you're probably going to have the opportunity for storms to really fire here with the best lift in the atmosphere. So there's a lot of wind energy right in here with a 50, 60 knot mid-level jet, embedded pockets of favorable low-level winds. This is flying over a very moist air mass, and honestly, this is more of just a westerly flow, not so much a northerly flow, more so than a westerly flow. But this is just basically a trough digging down, aiding in that kinematic flow. A lot of flow in the atmosphere, overriding over a very moist air mass. And this continues to dive down. This will continue to drive that wind threat. And you can see the kind of ripples in these lines here indicating energy embedded in this flow. So a lot of flow in the atmosphere. I know I love using that word. You're probably like, Mitch, God, you love saying flow. Well, it's a great way to describe the atmosphere in these cases. But very moist air mass that's underneath all this favorable kinematic energy ingredients. So the dew points is something huge I look at. This will aid in a lot of CAPE, a lot of storm energy in this area. Normally, the higher your dew points, the higher the CAPE. But there will be plenty of flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere to provide lift so storms could form. Therefore, those storms will take advantage of the ingredients in the atmosphere. So you basically got plenty of overlapping of ingredients with a very moist air mass. It'll be awfully humid across the Midwest the day ahead of these storms. And, just to take a look at the CAPE values here, they will be pretty high. And we're going to look at mixed layer CAPE, which typically is the better thing to look at overall. You look at other versions of CAPE in certain situations, but tons of fuel in the air, in the atmosphere, guys. I mean, you got mixed layer CAPE values reaching, it's probably going to be almost 5,000 joules per kilogram in some areas. But you see a boundary up here where there's hardly no storm fuel, and then there's a ton. It's because you do quite literally have a boundary in place, and that boundary is where these storms are going to ride. And here it is. You see how it goes from over 4,000 joules per kilogram in CAPE to nothing hardly? That's because storms form and, like Pac-Man, eat up all that energy in the atmosphere, except we're not talking about a video game here. But this is a great example of here. CAPE values spiked to over 5,000 joules per kilogram around Rockford, but then the storms move in and then drop it, eat up all the ingredients in the atmosphere, and you can see how that happens, how it munches it up all throughout the Midwest and the Ohio Valley Great Lakes region. So a ton of fuel in the atmosphere today. So that's the severe weather threat. Let's talk about the southeast, if we got enough energy left to do so. But just a very hot day across the southeast, especially Georgia and the Carolinas, up to Virginia. But we are going to have enough push in the atmosphere, enough moisture to get some storms firing. I would say Georgia, the Carolinas, maybe eastern Tennessee up to Virginia. There will be a risk of scattered downpours, some storms. Some of them could pack a punch. Very widespread showers and storms down here in Florida today. Remember I told you yesterday I was surprised they didn't have a risk of flash flooding in Florida? Well, the HRRR model ended up being correct with all that storm action in Florida yesterday. And did a heck of a job, actually. But just scattered pop-ups across the southeast. You can see some splotches of yellows and greens and reds here. And then with the loss of daytime heating, this will fade away. So, areas will get some rain. Most areas will not. But that'll change in the coming days. So just hold tight. Temperatures today, very, very hot. Nothing new, to be honest with you. We're just hitting 100 degrees like it ain't nothing these days in the Carolinas. It's just whatever to me at this point. I used to be like, wow, it's 100 degrees outside. This summer it's just been like, wow, it's 100 degrees outside. How miserable is this? But it's just been kind of one of those summers. It really has. So I really hope that we can take a hammer and knock down this heat in the coming days with this pattern change. But we'll see. The humidity will not go anywhere. I want to tell you guys, no fall air mass anytime soon. But very hot temperatures, upper 90s, low 100s. The heat indices will be in the mid 100s, like 105 to 110 in certain areas. The Northeast today, we're going to get some active weather. This energy left over in Michigan will move over to throughout southern Ontario. If you're tuning in from that area, watch out for some storms north of Lake Erie between Huron, Ontario, and Erie. Some storms will make their way through this morning into early this afternoon. Eventually, these will trail off into western New York. Well, we could get some heck of some storms here in western sections of New York, the southern tier of New York, the Finger Lakes region, eventually getting all the way to the Tuck Hill Plateau. These could ooze down into the northern counties of PA too. Could get some storms firing here in West Virginia, Maryland, northern VA. But eventually all this energy will trail off into Vermont, New Hampshire. And I mean, this is like midnight. We're getting some pretty intense storms based off this run of the HRRR model. Moving through northern sections of Vermont and New Hampshire, and then waking up to some unsettled weather maybe in Maine tomorrow. But a little bit closer look at our friends here in New York. Buffalo. I mean, I'd be careful around, what time is this? This is around maybe 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon. Some storms can move through. Rochester, same thing. Finger Lakes region, storms around rush hour, around dinner time tonight. Tug Hill Plateau, some storms. Syracuse, some storms late, 7, 8 p.m. tonight. Binghamton, same thing. These storms could be more intense than what this is showing in northern PA. And then eventually, like I said, throughout the entire Adirondacks, I would say, maybe as far south as Mass, Vermont, New Hampshire, some storms are quite possible. If we look at the wind gust swath from this, it does indicate some hefty wind gusts with some of these storms. I mean, I know this is in 1 hour intervals, remember. There's no actual and real gaps in between this. It just goes hour to hour. 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts are possible with some of these. There is a 15% risk of damaging winds. So be aware of that if you live in New York, northern PA today, all the way into Vermont, New Hampshire later tonight. So South Central U.S., more so quieter weather. It's been quiet for the most part since Beryl made landfall about a week ago now, right? Yeah. But some moisture in Colorado, scattered showers and storms. Could get some more intense storms in northeastern Colorado up there. But Texas will be pretty quiet. Some rain will kind of ooze down into Kansas from the west. Later tonight, could wake up to a damp ground. Could wake up to some storms maybe tomorrow morning around Kansas City, maybe Springfield, maybe even just Missouri in general. But all in all, there's not a whole lot to talk about in the southern plains. So enjoy your quieter weather and just hot summer that we all continue to get. But we already talked about the north central U.S., guys. So if you kind of jump to this timestamp, wanting an update on the severe weather threat, definitely go back and find the timestamp for the severe weather breakdown. But we get into this afternoon, just be mindful of some storms. Obviously, it's a big-time severe weather day across the north central U.S., but honestly, I don't even know why I'm showing you guys this because I pretty much already broke down this entire region. But I have not broke down the northern plains. So there is a risk of strong to severe storms riding the upper portion of this more flattened ridge now. And we could get some storms anywhere in Wyoming today, this afternoon. Some stormy conditions in northeastern Colorado. These could produce some damaging winds. I would say that's the biggest threat with these today. So just be aware of some gusty winds with these storms in western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, areas of Wyoming today, especially later this afternoon to this evening. These storms could pack a punch here. So even in areas of like northwestern Kansas as we move through. And then some cooler air we'll try to dive in behind that. Western U.S., another day, we'll just get a bunch of energy firing up across more so the central Rockies, not as much in kind of the southwestern U.S., even though we will get even a risk of strong to severe storms into southern sections of Arizona today. Tucson, maybe up to Phoenix, but widespread showers and storms just across this whole entire central Rockies. So if you're vacationing across the Rockies today, you're going to have to dodge some rain showers, maybe some storms that are just kind of pivoting across the Rockies. And then we get into tomorrow morning and things will be quieter. So Nevada, Utah, southern Idaho, Wyoming, maybe portions of Montana, Colorado, Arizona, northern New Mexico, maybe areas of California. Pretty much everybody. I just pretty much named almost every state in the western U.S. runs that risk of of just thunderstorms a day. Temperatures, hot, where it typically is hot this time of the year. The heat will pack a little bit more of a punch, though, for areas across the southeast, especially the Carolinas and Virginia and Georgia. Temperatures get into the upper 90s, low 100s, which is technically above average for this time of the year. The northeast, a pretty warm day. Upper 80s, low 90s for areas kind of closer to the I-95 corridor, a little bit cooler on these higher elevations. The Great Lakes region, just 80s, high humidity, though. Boundaries setting up, separating 80s and 90s in the Midwest. And then just a very hot one in the Great Plains. Continues to be a hot hot summer in the central to southern plains where your temperatures are just going to get, it just blows my mind how diverse the weather is in the plains. I tell everybody all the time, I'm like, people, I think everybody in every one of their states say, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. I think that is, I don't think you guys know that they say that in every single state. If you don't know, you know now. That people say that in every state, guys. Literally every single state. But listen, I'm telling you, a few states that really see the dramatic changes in the weather is the middle of the country, the plains. They get dramatic heat in the summer, dramatic cold in the winter. And sometimes you get what you call blue northers, these just crazy, extremely tight gradient cold fronts, Arctic fronts basically, that dive down just east of the Rockies. And ask Denver, right? And just really anybody in the plains, even as far south as like Dallas. I mean, one day you'll be 95 degrees, the next day you get a cold front that moves in and it's snowing at 30 degrees. Last time I checked, it does not do that in Columbia, South Carolina. It does not do that in the Carolinas. Now, we do have in the Carolinas something called cold air damming. It's a wedge. It'll move in. It'll dramatically change, kind of a warmer winter-like day, 65, 70 degrees. And the next day, it'll be in the 40s and 30s. But there's nothing quite as dramatic as the middle of the country's weather. Nothing. When was it? Back in 2020? Seems like 2020 was just a crazy year of weather where it was like early September where you guys in Denver and areas of Colorado were breaking record highs. Cold front moved in and then it was snowing like the next day. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So anyways, I'm done with all that. Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. The severe weather threat has increased. Big slight risk across the northeast areas of the Ohio Valley. Slight risk across the high plains. There is a tornado risk with this risk in the northeast tomorrow. So we will talk about that in the next video. And I will mention the pattern change, just the Climate Prediction Center. If you live in the blue area, that's where you have a risk of below average temperatures. The more darker blue is a higher risk. So we do have relief on the way. This is between the 20th and the 24th, but this will start before that. By the time we get into the later half of this week, guys, I wouldn't say a chillier pattern, but a cooler than average pattern could settle in, along with a rainier pattern. So this is the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. Chances of above average precipitation is there. So relief is on the way, guys. We just got to kind of tough it out the next couple of days here in the South. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you in the next video.